Welcome to Level 1 to 10, Beginner Paradoxes, where simple puzzles twist everyday logic and challenge your perception of reality. If you'd like to unwind and let these mind-bending ideas gently carry you into a state of reflection, feel free to close your eyes and let your thoughts drift. There's a small town where things are simple. Every man follows a strict rule. Either he shaves himself, or he gets shaved by the town's only barber. No exceptions. At first it seems straightforward. If a man doesn't shave himself, the barber shaves him. If he does shave himself, the barber leaves him alone. But then someone asks the real question. What about the barber? If the barber shaves himself, then he belongs to the group of men who shave themselves, which means he shouldn't be shaved by the barber. But the only way he wouldn't shave himself is if he was shaved by the barber, which is him. No matter how you try to solve it, you hit a logical contradiction. He can't shave himself, but he also can't not shave himself. It's an endless loop, a paradox with no escape. This paradox, first introduced by the philosopher Bertrand Russell, isn't just a fun riddle. It's an example of a deeper problem in logic. What happens when a rule tries to define itself? It's why modern mathematics had to be restructured, to avoid these kinds of infinite loops. But here's where it gets eerie. Something as simple as who shaves who can break reality. How many rules in your life only seem solid until you question them? What if laws, beliefs, and even the rules of the universe are just waiting to unravel? Let that thought drift through your mind as you slowly slip into sleep. Imagine an all-powerful being, a deity with limitless capabilities. Now pose this question. Can such a being create a stone so heavy that even they cannot lift it? At first glance, it seems like a straightforward inquiry, but it quickly spirals into a logical conundrum. If this omnipotent being can create a stone so massive that they cannot lift it, there exists something they cannot do, lifting the stone, which contradicts the very notion of omnipotence. Conversely, if they cannot create such a stone, it implies a limitation in their creative power, again challenging the concept of being all-powerful. This is the essence of the Omnipotence Paradox, also known as the Paradox of the Stone. It's a philosophical puzzle that has intrigued thinkers for centuries, questioning the very nature of absolute power and its boundaries. Some philosophers argue that true omnipotence doesn't entail the ability to perform logical contradictions. For instance, creating a square circle or a stone too heavy to lift are inherently nonsensical tasks. They suggest that omnipotence encompasses all that is logically possible, but not the logically impossible. As C.S. Lewis aptly put it, nonsense remains nonsense even when we talk it about God. Others propose that such paradoxes highlight the limitations of human language and comprehension when attempting to describe a being of infinite power. Our linguistic constructs and logical frameworks may simply be inadequate to encapsulate the concept of omnipotence fully. This statement is false. Simple words, yet an impossible contradiction. If the statement is true, then what it says must be correct, meaning the statement is false. But if the statement is false, then what it claims is incorrect, so it must be true. It loops endlessly, never settling on an answer, defying the very idea that a sentence must be either true or false. This is the liar's paradox, a logical trap that has baffled philosophers since ancient Greece. At first, it seems like a silly word game, a trick of language. But the deeper you go, the more unsettling it becomes. The paradox exposes a flaw not just in how we think about logic, but in how reality itself is structured. Something as basic as truth and falsehood can break down. What else can? Mathematicians and logicians have spent centuries trying to resolve it. Some have argued that statements like this should be considered meaningless, outside the realm of true or false. Others say logic itself must be restructured to account for contradictions. The great logician Kurt Gödel used a similar self-referential paradox to prove that some truths can never be proven, shaking the foundations of mathematics itself. But maybe the strangest part is this. If logic has gaps, if truth itself can collapse under the weight of paradox, what does that mean for everything you know? Your beliefs, your thoughts, your understanding of the world. How much of it rests on foundations that only seem solid? And if something as simple as a sentence can break reality, how do you know your reality isn't already broken? Let that thought drift through your mind as you slip into sleep. Imagine a hotel with an infinite number of rooms, each uniquely numbered. Room 1, Room 2, Room 3, and so on, stretching endlessly. Now picture that every single room is occupied. The hotel is fully booked. Under normal circumstances, a fully occupied hotel means no vacancies. But in this peculiar hotel known as Hilbert's Hotel, there's always room for more guests, illustrating the mind-bending nature of infinity. Suppose a new guest arrives seeking accommodation. How can the hotel manage this when all rooms are occupied? The solution is both simple and counterintuitive. The manager asks each current guest to move from their current room NN to room N+1 N+1. The guest in room 1 moves to room 2, the guest in room 2 moves to room 3, and so forth. This shift frees up room 1, making it available for the new guest. Remarkably, despite the hotel being fully occupied, it can still accommodate additional guests. Now let's escalate the scenario. Imagine an infinite number of new guests arrive simultaneously, perhaps delivered by an infinite fleet of buses, each carrying an infinite number of passengers. It seems impossible to accommodate them all, but Hilbert's Hotel can rise to the challenge. The manager can instruct each current guest to move from room NN to room 2N2N, doubling their room number. This action relocates all existing guests to even-numbered rooms, leaving all odd-numbered rooms vacant. Consequently, the infinite number of new guests can be assigned to these newly vacated odd-numbered rooms. This thought experiment, introduced by the German mathematician David Hilbert, highlights the counterintuitive properties of infinite sets. In the realm of infinity, the whole can be equivalent to a part, and a full set can still accommodate more elements. Hilbert's Hotel challenges our conventional understanding of space, occupancy, and quantity, revealing that infinity defies our finite intuitions. Imagine an ancient vessel celebrated and preserved for generations, the Ship of Theseus. Over time, its wooden planks decay, and one by one, each is replaced with new timber. Eventually, not a single original piece remains. This raises a profound question. Is it still the same ship? This thought experiment, known as the Ship of Theseus Paradox, delves into the nature of identity and change. If an object undergoes complete replacement of its components over time, does it retain its original identity, or does it become something entirely new? Philosopher Thomas Hobbes extended this paradox further. He proposed that if the discarded original planks were collected and reassembled into a ship, there would now be two vessels, one made entirely of new materials and another reconstructed from the original parts. Which, if either, is the true Ship of Theseus? This dilemma challenges our understanding of identity. Is it defined by the continuity of form and function, or by the persistence of original material? When applied to ourselves, it becomes even more intriguing. The human body continually regenerates cells, with most being replaced over a span of years. Yet we perceive our identity as constant. So, what truly defines the essence of an object, or a person, over time? Imagine a prisoner sentenced to be hanged at noon on a weekday in the upcoming week. The judge informs him that the execution will come as a surprise. He won't know the day of the hanging until the executioner arrives at his cell door. The prisoner, trying to outsmart his fate, reasons as follows. If the hanging were to occur on Friday, he would know by Thursday evening that his execution is imminent, as it's the last remaining day. This foreknowledge contradicts the element of surprise promised by the judge. Therefore, he concludes the hanging cannot be on Friday. With Friday eliminated, he considers Thursday. By Wednesday evening, knowing that Friday is no longer an option, he would anticipate a Thursday execution, again nullifying the surprise. Applying this logic recursively, he dismisses Wednesday, Tuesday, and finally Monday, concluding that the hanging cannot occur on any day of the week. Satisfied with his deduction, the prisoner is taken aback when the executioner arrives unexpectedly midweek, catching him completely off guard. This scenario encapsulates the unexpected hanging paradox, also known as the surprise examination paradox, which challenges our understanding of knowledge and prediction. At its core, the paradox arises from the prisoner's attempt to predict an event that is designed to be unpredictable. His logical reasoning leads to a conclusion that contradicts the judge's assurance of a surprise execution. This self-referential problem highlights the limitations of certain logical frameworks when applied to scenarios involving knowledge about future events. Philosophers and logicians have debated this paradox extensively, exploring its implications for epistemology and the philosophy of language. Some interpretations suggest that the paradox reveals inherent limitations in our ability to fully anticipate future occurrences, especially when those events are structured to defy prediction. Imagine you're trying to confirm the hypothesis that all ravens are black. Naturally, each time you observe a black raven, it reinforces this idea. But here's where things get strange. According to logical principles, observing a red apple, a non-black, non-raven object, also supports the notion that all ravens are black. This counterintuitive scenario is known as the paradox of the ravens. The paradox arises from the logical equivalence between the statements, all ravens are black, and all non-black things are non-ravens. Observing a black raven directly supports the first statement. However, when you encounter a red apple, it fits the second statement, as it's a non-black object that isn't a raven. By this logic, every non-black, non-raven observation, like a green car or a blue book, indirectly supports the idea that all ravens are black. This seems absurd because our intuition tells us that observing objects unrelated to ravens shouldn't impact our belief about raven coloration. The paradox challenges our understanding of how evidence supports generalizations and highlights the complexities in the philosophy of science regarding confirmation theory. As you ponder this paradox, consider how our perceptions of evidence and relevance can be more intertwined and more perplexing than they initially appear. Imagine participating in a fair lottery with 1,000 tickets, where only one ticket will win. Rationally, you believe that ticket number 1 will lose as the odds are overwhelmingly against it. The same reasoning applies to ticket number 2, ticket number 3, and so forth, up to ticket #1000. For each individual ticket, it's rational to believe it will not win. However, you also know that one ticket must win. This leads to a paradox. It's rational to believe that each specific ticket will lose, yet it's also rational to believe that one ticket will win. How can these seemingly contradictory beliefs coexist? This conundrum is known as the lottery paradox, first introduced by philosopher Henry E. Keiberg Jr. in 1961. It challenges our understanding of rational belief and knowledge, particularly when dealing with high probabilities and collective outcomes. The paradox arises from 3 seemingly plausible principles. It's rational to believe a proposition if it has a high probability of being true. If it's rational to believe each of a set of propositions individually, it's rational to believe their conjunction. It's irrational to hold contradictory beliefs. Applying these principles to the lottery scenario leads to a contradiction. Believing each ticket will lose, based on high probability, and combining these beliefs, closure under conjunction, implies that no ticket will win, contradicting the certainty that one ticket will win, consistency. Philosophers have proposed various resolutions to this paradox. One approach is to reject the principle of closure under conjunction, suggesting that while it's rational to believe each ticket will lose individually, it's not rational to believe that all tickets will lose collectively. Another approach questions the rationality of believing propositions based solely on high probability, arguing that belief should be reserved for certainties, and high probability should lead only to tentative acceptance. The lottery paradox invites us to reflect on the nature of belief, knowledge, and probability. It challenges the boundaries of rational thought, especially when dealing with large sets of probable but uncertain events. As you drift into sleep, let this paradox gently stir your thoughts, pondering how we reconcile individual rational beliefs with collective realities. Imagine a single grain of sand resting in your hand, clearly not a heap. Add another, then another. At some point you might look down and say, now it's a heap. But when did that transformation occur? Was it at the 10th grain? The 50th? The 100th? This puzzle is known as the Sorites Paradox, derived from the Greek word for heap. It challenges our understanding of vague predicates, terms without clear boundaries. The paradox operates on a simple premise. Removing or adding a single grain of sand doesn't change whether we consider it a heap. If you start with a heap and remove grains one by one, at what exact point does it stop being a heap? Conversely, starting with a single grain and adding more, when does it become a heap? This problem isn't confined to sand. It applies to concepts like baldness, tallness, or richness. For instance, if a person with a full head of hair loses hairs gradually, at what point do they become bald? If someone saves money over time, when do they transition from not rich to rich? Philosophers have grappled with this paradox for centuries. Some suggest that our language is inherently imprecise, and terms like heap or bald don't have strict definitions. Others propose that there might be a specific threshold, but it's inherently unknowable, making the concept subjective. This paradox highlights the challenges in fields like law or medicine, where clear definitions are crucial. It forces us to confront the blurry lines in our classifications and question the precision of our language. Imagine standing at the start of a path, intending to reach the end. Before you can get there, you must first cover half the distance. Once that's achieved, you must then cover half of the remaining distance, and then half of what's left after that, and so on. This process of continually having the remaining distance suggests an infinite number of steps are required to reach your destination. This is known as Zeno's Dichotomy Paradox, which raises the question: if you must complete an infinite number of tasks to reach your goal, can you ever actually arrive? Zeno of Elea, a 5th century BC Greek philosopher, introduced several paradoxes challenging our understanding of motion and change. Another famous example is the paradox of Achilles and the tortoise. In this scenario, swift-footed Achilles gives the tortoise a head start in a race. While Achilles runs to the tortoise's starting point, the tortoise advances a bit further. Each time Achilles reaches the position where the tortoise was, the tortoise has moved ahead, suggesting that Achilles can never overtake the tortoise, despite his greater speed. These paradoxes have puzzled thinkers for centuries, questioning the very nature of motion and the concept of infinity. If space and time can be infinitely divided, does motion become an illusion? How can we reconcile our everyday experiences of movement with these logical conundrums? The resolution to Zeno's paradoxes came much later with the development of calculus in the 17th century by mathematicians like Isaac Newton and Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz. Calculus introduced the concept of convergent series, where the sum of an infinite number of diminishing distances can indeed be finite. This mathematical framework allows us to understand that, although there are infinitely many points to pass, the total distance and time can still be finite, enabling motion to occur as we observe in reality. As you drift into sleep, let these ancient puzzles gently nudge your thoughts. Consider how concepts of infinity and motion intertwine, and how our understanding of the universe continues to evolve, unraveling mysteries that once seemed beyond our grasp. Welcome to levels 11 to 30, intermediate paradoxes, where each mystery deepens the enigma of existence. Feel free to close your eyes and let these riddles gently guide your thoughts into the realm of wonder. Imagine standing at a crossroads, believing you can choose any path. Yet, if every decision you make is shaped by prior events, your genetics, upbringing, and experiences, do you truly have free will? This is the essence of the free will paradox, a profound dilemma that has puzzled philosophers for centuries. Determinism suggests that every event, including human actions, is the inevitable result of preceding causes. If true, this implies that our choices are preordained by a chain of prior occurrences, challenging the notion of free will. Conversely, if our actions are not determined and occur randomly, it's hard to see how they could be attributed to our conscious choice, again undermining the concept of free will. Philosophers have approached this paradox from various angles. Compatibilists argue that free will and determinism are not mutually exclusive. They believe that free will can be understood as the ability to act according to one's desires and intentions, even if those desires are themselves determined by prior causes. Incompatibilists, on the other hand, maintain that true free will cannot exist in a deterministic universe. They argue that if our choices are predetermined, the sense of moral responsibility becomes questionable. Neuroscientific studies have added another layer to this debate. Experiments have shown that the brain initiates actions milliseconds before we become consciously aware of our decisions, suggesting that what we perceive as free will might be an illusion. However, this interpretation is contentious, and the extent to which these findings undermine free will is still a matter of active debate. As you ponder this paradox, consider the delicate balance between determinism and the human experience of choice. Reflect on how much of your life is shaped by forces beyond your control, and where, if anywhere, genuine freedom lies. Imagine an arrow in flight, slicing through the air toward its target. According to Zeno's paradox of the arrow, at any single indivisible moment in time, the arrow occupies a specific position in space, appearing motionless. If every instant is like this, just a series of motionless snapshots, how does the arrow actually move? Zeno of Elea, a 5th century BC Greek philosopher, proposed this paradox to challenge our understanding of motion and time. He argued that if time is composed of these indivisible instants, and the arrow is stationary at each instant, then motion itself is an illusion. This paradox puzzled thinkers for centuries, highlighting the limitations of our intuitive grasp of time and movement. It wasn't until the development of calculus in the 17th century that a resolution emerged. Calculus introduced the concept of limits and infinitesimals, allowing mathematicians to describe continuous motion as the sum of infinitely many infinitesimally small steps. Through this lens, motion becomes a seamless progression, even if each individual instant appears motionless. Zeno's arrow paradox also finds echoes in modern physics, particularly in the quantum Zeno effect. This phenomenon suggests that a quantum system's evolution can be hindered or even halted by frequent observations, reminiscent of the arrow's frozen motion at each instant. As you drift into sleep, let this paradox gently nudge your thoughts, inviting you to ponder the nature of time, motion, and the mysteries that lie beyond our everyday perceptions. Imagine a collection that includes all sets which do not contain themselves as members. Let's call this collection R. The paradox arises when we ask, does R contain itself? If R contains itself, it contradicts its own definition of including only sets that do not contain themselves. Conversely, if R does not contain itself, then by its own definition, it should include itself. This self-referential loop creates a logical contradiction, known as Russell's paradox. This paradox challenges the foundations of set theory, which is the mathematical study of collections of objects. In naive set theory, any definable collection is considered a set. However, Russell's paradox demonstrates that some seemingly valid sets lead to contradictions, indicating a flaw in this unrestricted approach. To resolve this issue, mathematicians developed more rigorous axiomatic systems for set theory. One such system is the Zermelo-Fraenkel set theory, ZF, which imposes restrictions on set formation to avoid such paradoxes. Another approach is Russell's type theory, which organizes sets into a hierarchy to prevent self-referential definitions. Russell's paradox not only influenced mathematics but also had profound implications in philosophy and logic, prompting a re-evaluation of the foundations of these disciplines. As you ponder this paradox, consider how self-reference and unrestricted definitions can lead to contradictions, challenging our understanding of logical consistency. Imagine standing at the starting line of a race, ready to sprint toward the finish. Before reaching the end, you must first cover half the distance. Once that's achieved, you then need to cover half of the remaining distance and then half of that, and so on. This process of continually having the remaining distance suggests an infinite number of steps are required to reach your destination. This is known as Zeno's Dichotomy Paradox, which raises the question: if you must complete an infinite number of tasks to reach your goal, can you ever actually arrive? Zeno of Elea, a 5th century BC Greek philosopher, introduced this paradox to challenge our understanding of motion and the concept of infinity. He argued that if space and time can be infinitely divided, then motion itself becomes an illusion, as one could never complete the infinite subdivisions required to reach any point. The resolution to Zeno's paradoxes came much later with the development of calculus in the 17th century by mathematicians like Isaac Newton and Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz. Calculus introduced the concept of convergent series, where the sum of an infinite number of diminishing distances can indeed be finite. For example, the series 1/2 plus 1/4 plus 1/8 plus 1/16 plus midline horizontal ellipsis converges to 1. Illustrating that an infinite number of steps can sum to a finite distance. This mathematical framework allows us to understand that, although there are infinitely many points to pass, the total distance and time can still be finite, enabling motion to occur as we observe in reality. As you drift into sleep, let these ancient puzzles gently nudge your thoughts. Consider how concepts of infinity and motion intertwine, and how our understanding of the universe continues to evolve, unraveling mysteries that once seemed beyond our grasp. Imagine a time traveler who discovers a fascinating book in the future. Captivated, they journey back to the past and share the book's contents, leading to its publication. Over time, this very book inspires the time traveler in their youth, setting them on the path to eventually find it in the future. This scenario poses a perplexing question: who is the original author of the book? The knowledge seems to exist without an origin, caught in an endless loop where effect becomes cause and cause becomes effect. This conundrum is known as the Bootstrap Paradox, a term derived from the notion of pulling oneself up by one's bootstraps. An impossible feat in the context of time travel, it refers to objects, information, or people that exist without a clear point of creation, emerging from a self-sustaining loop in time. The paradox challenges our conventional understanding of causality, where every effect has a distinct cause originating in the past. Science fiction has long explored the intricacies of the Bootstrap Paradox. In Robert A. Heinlein's 1941 novella, By His Bootstraps, the protagonist encounters future versions of himself, each influencing the other's actions in a complex temporal loop. Similarly, Heinlein's 1958 short story, All You Zombies, presents a character who, through a series of time-traveling events, becomes their own mother and father, embodying the ultimate self-originating paradox. The Bootstrap Paradox extends beyond literature into philosophical debates about the nature of time and existence. It raises questions about the possibility of information or objects existing without a clear point of origin, challenging the linear progression of cause and effect. Some interpretations suggest that such paradoxes could imply the existence of multiple timelines or parallel universes, where events can influence each other across different realities. As you drift into sleep, let the enigma of the Bootstrap Paradox gently unravel in your mind. Consider the mysteries of time, causality, and the intriguing possibilities that arise when the boundaries of past, present, and future blur into an infinite loop. Imagine if, before your birth, you existed in a state of pure consciousness, devoid of any physical form or identity. In this state, you are about to be assigned a body, a family, a culture, and a set of circumstances entirely at random, a lottery of birth. Now consider, if you were born into a different body with a different upbringing and environment, would you still be you? This thought experiment challenges our understanding of personal identity. Are we defined by our physical bodies, our genetic makeup, or the sum of our experiences and memories? Philosopher John Locke argued that personal identity is rooted in consciousness and memory, not in the substance of the soul or the body. He suggested that as long as one's consciousness remains continuous, the person remains the same regardless of changes in the body. Expanding on this idea, philosopher John Rawls introduced the concept of the original position and the veil of ignorance. In this thought experiment, individuals design principles of justice for society without knowing their own place within it, ignorant of their race, gender, abilities, or social status. This encourages the creation of fair and impartial societal structures, as decisions are made without personal bias. These philosophical explorations highlight the role of external factors, such as genetics, environment, and culture, in shaping who we become. They prompt us to question the extent to which our identity is a product of circumstances beyond our control. If you had been born into a different body with a different set of experiences, would your core essence remain the same, or would you be an entirely different person? As you drift into sleep, let this paradox gently stir your thoughts. Reflect on the intricate tapestry of factors that contribute to your identity and consider the profound interconnectedness of all human experiences. Imagine standing before a mirror, raising your right hand. In the reflection, it appears as though your left hand is raised. This phenomenon leads many to believe that mirrors flip images left to right. However, when you nod your head, the mirror doesn't invert your reflection to show your head pointing downward. This observation raises an intriguing question. Why do mirrors seem to reverse left and right but not up and down? The answer lies in our perception rather than the mirror's behavior. Mirrors don't actually flip images horizontally or vertically. Instead, they reverse the depth axis, front to back. When you stand facing a mirror, your front is reflected as your back and vice versa. This front-to-back reversal means that your left side remains on the left in the reflection, and your right side remains on the right. Similarly, your head stays at the top and your feet at the bottom. The mirror doesn't swap these orientations. The perception of left-right reversal arises from how we interpret the mirrored image. When facing someone directly, we instinctively align our left with their right and our right with their left. This mental mapping leads us to perceive a left-right flip in the mirror. However, this is a cognitive interpretation, not an actual inversion performed by the mirror. To further illustrate, consider holding a transparent sheet with text written on it. If you face the text toward a mirror, it appears reversed. But if you turn the sheet around to face yourself, the text reads correctly. This demonstrates that the mirror doesn't flip the text. Rather, it's our orientation relative to the text that changes our perception. In essence, mirrors reverse images along the axis perpendicular to their surface, front to back. The perceived left-right inversion is a result of our cognitive processing and the way we relate to the mirrored image. Understanding this challenges our intuitive notions and invites us to reconsider how we perceive reflections and symmetry in our daily experiences. As you ponder this paradox, let it gently guide your thoughts toward the complexities of perception and reality, inviting a deeper appreciation for the nuances of how we see and interpret the world around us. Imagine waking up each day, going through your routine and ending the day as usual, only to wake up and find that the day has reset, and you're reliving the same events again, yet you're completely unaware of the repetition. This scenario, often depicted in science fiction as a time loop, raises profound questions about consciousness, free will, and the nature of reality. In popular culture, time loops are typically portrayed with the protagonist retaining memories of each iteration, allowing them to recognize and eventually break free from the cycle. However, if one were trapped in a time loop without any memory of the previous cycles, each day would feel entirely new, indistinguishable from the original experience. This leads to a paradoxical situation. You're reliving the same events perpetually, yet from your subjective perspective, time appears to progress linearly. This concept challenges our understanding of time and existence. If you're unaware of the loop, does it matter that you're in one? Your experiences, emotions, and actions would reset with each iteration, rendering personal growth and long-term consequences meaningless. Philosophically, this touches on debates about determinism and the illusion of choice. Are we merely following a predetermined script, believing we're making autonomous decisions? Moreover, the idea of an unnoticed time loop parallels certain psychological conditions where individuals feel trapped in repetitive patterns of behavior or thought, unaware of the cyclical nature of their experiences. It also resonates with existential questions about the monotony of daily life and the search for meaning in seemingly repetitive routines. As you drift into sleep, ponder the nature of time and consciousness. If we were caught in an endless loop without awareness, would our lives hold the same value? Or does the beauty of existence lie in its fleeting, ever-changing moments, each unique and unrepeatable? Imagine a being that knows everything, every fact, every event, every thought. This is the essence of omniscience. But this concept raises intriguing questions. If such a being knows everything, can it ever learn anything new? And if it can't, does that imply a limitation? The paradox of omniscience challenges our understanding of knowledge and perfection. If an omniscient being already possesses all knowledge, the act of learning becomes impossible as there's nothing new to acquire. This suggests a static state of existence devoid of discovery or growth. Some argue that this very inability to learn indicates a limitation, contradicting the notion of being all-knowing. Philosophers have debated this conundrum extensively. Some propose that omniscience includes knowledge of all possibilities and potentialities, encompassing every conceivable scenario. Others suggest that omniscience pertains only to all actual truths, not extending to the experience of learning or the process of acquiring knowledge. This paradox also intersects with discussions about free will and predestination. If an omniscient being knows all future events, does that knowledge constrain the freedom of individuals? And if so, how does that align with the concept of moral responsibility? As you drift into sleep, let this paradox gently stir your thoughts, inviting you to ponder the nature of knowledge, the limits of understanding, and the mysteries that lie beyond the grasp of even the most enlightened minds. Imagine this. You wake up, start your day, perhaps make a cup of coffee, and then suddenly you wake up again. The previous awakening was merely a dream. This phenomenon, known as a false awakening, blurs the lines between dreaming and reality, leading to a perplexing question. If you keep waking up within your dreams, how can you be certain when you're truly awake? False awakenings are vivid dreams where individuals believe they've woken up, only to find they're still asleep. During these episodes, people often dream of performing routine morning activities, convinced they're awake. Such experiences typically occur during rapid eye movement, REM, sleep, the stage most closely associated with dreaming. This paradox challenges our understanding of consciousness and reality. If our minds can fabricate such convincing replicas of wakefulness, It raises the unsettling possibility that our current experiences might also be fabrications. Philosophers have long pondered this dilemma. René Descartes, for instance, questioned the reliability of our senses, proposing that because dreams can mimic reality so closely, we can never be entirely sure we're not dreaming. In some cases, individuals experience nested dreams, where multiple false awakenings occur consecutively. A person might wake up several times within a single sleep cycle, each time believing they've returned to reality, only to discover they're still dreaming. These experiences can be disorienting and may lead to anxiety about distinguishing dreams from reality. However, they also offer a unique opportunity for lucid dreaming, where the dreamer becomes aware they're dreaming and can potentially control the dream's narrative. As you drift into sleep, consider the delicate boundary between dreams and reality. How do you know with absolute certainty that you're awake right now? This paradox invites you to explore the depths of your consciousness, questioning the very nature of your perceptions and the reality they construct. Imagine yourself as a child playing in the park and now as an adult reading this text. Physically, almost every cell in your body has been replaced over the years. It's estimated that within a span of 7 years, nearly all the cells in your body die and are replaced. Yet you still consider yourself the same person. This scenario parallels the ancient philosophical puzzle known as the Ship of Theseus. In this thought experiment, a ship owned by Theseus undergoes continuous repairs, with each wooden plank replaced one by one over time. Philosophers question, after all parts have been replaced, is it still the same ship? Applying this to human identity, if every part of your body is replaced over time, are you still the same person? Some argue that material continuity defines identity, suggesting that once all original components are gone, the original entity ceases to exist. Others believe that as long as the overall structure and function remain consistent, identity persists, regardless of material changes. This paradox challenges our understanding of self. Are we merely a collection of constantly changing cells, or is there an underlying essence that maintains our identity over time? As you drift into sleep, ponder the fluid nature of existence and what truly defines who we are. Imagine a monkey randomly hitting keys on a typewriter for an infinite amount of time. The infinite monkey theorem posits that, given such conditions, the monkey would almost surely type out any given text, including the complete works of William Shakespeare. This thought experiment illustrates the concept of infinity and probability. In theory, with infinite time, every possible sequence of characters would eventually be produced. However, in practical terms, the likelihood of a monkey typing even a single coherent sentence from Shakespeare's works is astronomically low. Recent studies have shown that the universe would end long before a monkey could randomly produce such literary works. In 2002, an experiment involving real monkeys was conducted, where a computer keyboard was placed in the enclosure of 6 macaques. Over a month, the monkeys produced 5 pages of text, largely consisting of the letter S, and caused some damage to the equipment. This outcome highlights the impracticality of the theorem in real-world scenarios. The infinite monkey theorem serves as a metaphor for the concepts of randomness and probability, rather than a literal proposition. It underscores the vastness of infinity and the improbability of certain events occurring by chance, even given limitless time. As you ponder this paradox, consider the delicate balance between randomness and order in the universe, and how within the infinite, even the most improbable events become possible. Imagine stepping into a time machine, journeying back to an era before your parents were born, and confronting your own grandfather in his youth. Driven by some impulse, you prevent him from meeting your future grandmother. This action sets off a cascade of consequences. Your parents are never born and consequently neither are you. But here's the paradox. If you were never born, how could you have traveled back in time to alter your grandfather's fate? This conundrum is known as the Grandfather Paradox, a classic example of the challenges time travel poses to our understanding of causality. It illustrates a situation where an effect, your time-traveling intervention, prevents its own cause, your existence, leading to a logical contradiction. Philosophers and physicists have proposed various resolutions to this paradox. Novikov's self-consistency principle. This principle suggests that any actions taken by a time traveler were always part of history, ensuring consistency. In this view, the timeline is self-correcting. Any attempt to alter the past would be thwarted by circumstances, preserving the original sequence of events. Parallel universes. Many worlds interpretation. Another proposition is that altering the past creates a divergent timeline or parallel universe. In this scenario, your intervention spawns a new reality where you were never born, but the original timeline remains unaffected. This concept aligns with the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics, where every possible outcome exists in a separate, branching universe. Quantum mechanics and probability. Some theories suggest that quantum mechanics allows for time travel without paradoxes. For instance, certain models propose that the probabilities of events adjust to prevent inconsistencies, ensuring that actions taken by a time traveler harmonize with the overall timeline. The Grandfather Paradox not only challenges our notions of cause and effect but also invites us to reconsider the nature of time itself. As you ponder this enigma, consider the intricate tapestry of events that lead to the present moment, and how delicate alterations could ripple through the fabric of reality. Imagine a sealed box containing a cat, a vial of poison, a radioactive atom, and a Geiger counter. If the Geiger counter detects radiation from the atom's decay, it triggers the release of the poison, resulting in the cat's death. If no decay occurs, the cat remains alive. Until the box is opened and observed, the cat exists in a superposition of both alive and dead states simultaneously. This thought experiment, proposed by physicist Erwin Schrödinger in 1935, illustrates the counterintuitive nature of quantum mechanics, particularly the concept of superposition. In the quantum realm, particles can exist in multiple states at once until observed. Schrödinger's cat paradox challenges our understanding by applying this principle to macroscopic objects, questioning when and how quantum superpositions collapse into a single reality. The paradox has sparked various interpretations within quantum mechanics. The Copenhagen interpretation suggests that the act of observation collapses the superposition, determining the cat's fate. In contrast, the many worlds interpretation posits that all possible outcomes occur, each in a separate, branching universe, meaning the cat is both alive and dead, but in different realities. Schrödinger's cat remains a central topic in discussions about the nature of reality and measurement in quantum mechanics, highlighting the challenges of applying quantum principles to everyday objects. Imagine looking at a bright red apple. You know it's red. Everyone around you agrees that it's red. But what if the red you see isn't the same red someone else sees? What if their brain interprets that color in a way that you could never comprehend? And how would you ever know? Color is just light waves bouncing off objects and hitting your eyes. Your brain processes those signals and you experience what you call color. But here's the catch. Your brain doesn't actually see color. It just interprets electrical signals from your eyes and creates an experience. Your version of red could be someone else's blue and you'd never know because you both call it red. It's an unsolvable mystery locked inside every human mind. Some researchers believe that differences in biology, language, and culture shape how we perceive color. People with more cone cells in their eyes can see millions of shades the average person can't, colors that don't even exist in your reality. Some languages don't have separate words for blue and green, which means those speakers might actually perceive them as the same color. And then there are optical illusions, like the infamous dress that some people saw as white and gold and others swore was blue and black. If color were objective, how could people's brains see it so differently? The color perception paradox asks a simple but unsettling question. How much of what you experience is real and how much is just your brain's best guess? You think you're seeing the world as it is, but you're really seeing a version of reality that only exists in your mind. And if something as fundamental as color is completely subjective, what else might be an illusion? Imagine a photon traveling through space, approaching a fork where it can take one of two paths. In classical physics, once the photon chooses a path, that decision is fixed. However, in quantum mechanics, the photon's behavior can exhibit both particle-like and wave-like properties, depending on how it's observed. Physicist John Archibald Wheeler proposed the delayed choice experiment to explore this phenomenon. In this thought experiment, the decision to observe the photon as a particle, determining which path it took, or as a wave, observing interference patterns, is made after the photon has entered the experimental setup. Surprisingly, the outcome suggests that the method of observation retroactively influences the photon's past behavior, challenging our conventional understanding of time and causality. Experimental realizations of Wheeler's proposal have been conducted, confirming these counterintuitive predictions. For instance, a study demonstrated that whether the photon exhibited wave-like or particle-like behavior depended on the type of measurement performed, even when the choice was made after the photon had entered the interferometer. These findings do not imply that the present changes the past in a classical sense. Instead, they highlight the non-classical correlations inherent in quantum systems, where the act of measurement plays a crucial role in determining the behavior of particles. As you drift into sleep, ponder the mysteries of quantum mechanics, where time and causality intertwine in ways that defy our everyday experiences, inviting us to question the very nature of reality. Imagine that 5 minutes ago, the universe sprang into existence exactly as it is now. Your memories, your relationships, the scars on your body, the unfinished tasks on your to-do list, all of it was fabricated in an instant. You feel like you've lived your entire life up to this point, but what if all those memories were planted there, mere illusions of a past that never actually happened? This is the 5-minute hypothesis, an unsettling thought experiment that questions the very nature of memory and reality. The idea was first proposed by philosopher Bertrand Russell, who suggested that there's no way to prove the universe didn't just emerge moments ago, complete with pre-existing memories and historical records that give the illusion of a past. If everything you recall, your childhood, world history, even your first love, was artificially placed in your brain at the moment of creation, how would you ever know the difference? It all comes down to a simple problem. We use memory to verify the past, but what if memory itself is unreliable? We assume time is linear, that the past leads to the present in a continuous flow. But our memories aren't perfect records of reality, they're reconstructions, often filled with distortions and gaps. If you can misremember details from just last week, how can you be certain that your entire past isn't just a carefully constructed illusion? Scientists have already shown that false memories can be implanted through suggestion. People have recalled childhood events that never happened, complete with emotions and sensory details. Entire groups of people have collectively remembered events that never occurred, a phenomenon known as the Mandela effect. If your brain can fabricate the past, then the past itself becomes questionable. The 5-minute hypothesis doesn't necessarily suggest that the universe was actually created 5 minutes ago, but it forces you to confront a deeper issue. What proof do you really have that the past exists? If the only evidence is inside your mind and your mind can be wrong, then maybe, just maybe, the only moment that has ever existed is right now. Imagine a star collapsing under its own gravity, forming a black hole, a region in space where gravity is so intense that nothing, not even light, can escape. According to Einstein's theory of general relativity, black holes can be fully described by just three properties: mass, electric charge, and angular momentum. This simplicity leads to a conundrum. What happens to the detailed information about the matter that formed the black hole? Is it lost forever, or does it somehow persist? In 1974, physicist Stephen Hawking introduced the concept of Hawking radiation, proposing that black holes are not entirely black but emit radiation due to quantum effects near the event horizon. Over time, this radiation causes the black hole to lose mass and eventually evaporate completely. The paradox arises because Hawking radiation appears to be purely thermal and carries no information about the matter that fell into the black hole. If the black hole evaporates entirely, it seems that the information about its contents is irretrievably lost, violating a fundamental principle of quantum mechanics that dictates information must be conserved. This conflict between general relativity and quantum mechanics has puzzled physicists for decades. However, recent theoretical advancements suggest possible resolutions. Some researchers propose that information might be preserved in subtle correlations within Hawking radiation, implying that the radiation is not entirely random but encodes information about the black hole's interior. Others explore the idea that quantum entanglement and spacetime wormholes could play a role in resolving the paradox, allowing information to escape from black holes in ways not yet fully understood. As you ponder this paradox, consider the profound implications it holds for our understanding of the universe. The resolution of the black hole information paradox could lead to a deeper comprehension of the fundamental laws governing reality, bridging the gap between the macroscopic world described by general relativity and the microscopic realm of quantum mechanics. Imagine waking up one day with a lifetime of memories: your childhood, your first love, the places you've traveled, the lessons you've learned. Everything feels familiar, vivid, real. But what if none of it ever actually happened? What if your memories were planted, fabricated, or just glitches in your mind? And here's the real question. If everything you know is based on memory, how do you ever verify that your memories are real? This is the paradox of memory, a terrifying flaw in human cognition. We rely on memory to define ourselves, to make decisions, to understand the world. But memory isn't a perfect recording of reality. It's fluid, malleable, and disturbingly unreliable. Studies show that every time you recall a memory, you're not remembering the original event. You're remembering the last time you remembered it. Each time, tiny distortions creep in, reshaping the past in ways you don't even notice. Psychologists have demonstrated that entirely false memories can be implanted. People have remembered crimes they never committed, childhood experiences that never happened, and conversations that were never spoken. The Mandela effect reveals that entire groups of people misremember the same historical details, recalling events that contradict recorded history. And in extreme cases, dissociative disorders and neurological conditions can cause people to lose memories, fabricate new ones, or even construct entirely new identities based on false recollections. So if your past is just a collection of stories your brain tells itself, and those stories can change how much of your identity is real. If your most cherished memories could be fabrications, who are you really? The paradox of memory forces you to question the foundation of everything you know. Your past, your experiences, your very sense of self. Are they unshakable truths or just illusions your mind has carefully woven over time? Why is there something rather than nothing? This profound question has intrigued philosophers, theologians, and scientists for centuries, delving into the very nature of existence and the origins of the universe. Philosopher Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz, in 1714, pondered this enigma, suggesting that the sufficient reason for existence is found in a necessary being bearing the reason for its existence within itself. In the realm of physics, some propose that the universe could arise from quantum fluctuations, where particles spontaneously emerge from a vacuum state. This concept implies that nothingness may be inherently unstable, leading to the spontaneous creation of something. Others argue that the very notion of nothing is problematic. Defining nothing as the absence of anything, including space, time, and laws of physics, leads to the paradox that nothing cannot exist. Therefore, the existence of something becomes a necessity. Physicist Lawrence Krauss, in his book, A Universe from Nothing, explores how quantum mechanics allows for the possibility of universes spontaneously forming from nothing, challenging traditional notions of non-existence. This paradox invites us to explore the boundaries of human understanding, contemplating the mysteries of existence and the origins of reality. Welcome to levels 31 to 50, where expert paradoxes twist your reality. Feel free to close your eyes and let these mysteries gently guide you into deep reflection. Imagine holding on to the present moment, the now, as if it were something tangible. But the second you acknowledge it, it's already gone, slipping into the past. The future instantly takes its place, but by the time you grasp it, that too has vanished. If every now disappears the moment it arrives, does the present even exist at all? This is the paradox of the present, a deep philosophical and scientific puzzle about the nature of time. We experience reality as a continuous flow, but the present is impossible to pin down. Is it an infinitesimally small slice between the past and the future? Or is it just an illusion, a mental construct created by our brains to make sense of time? Physics complicates the picture even further. Einstein's theory of relativity shows that time isn't absolute. It stretches and contracts depending on speed and gravity. A person moving at near light speed experiences time slower than someone standing still. If time itself is relative, then so is the present. What's happening now, for you, may not be happening now, for someone moving faster or experiencing stronger gravity. The very idea of a universal now collapses. Some philosophers argue that time itself might not even exist in the way we think. The block universe theory suggests that the past, present, and future all exist simultaneously, like frames in a film reel. We only perceive time as moving forward because our consciousness is trapped, experiencing one moment at a time. But if all of time already exists, then now isn't a special moment. It's just one point on an already determined timeline. So what does that mean for you? If the present is just a fleeting illusion, what does that say about your experience of life? Are you truly moving through time, or are you just a passenger in a story that has already been written? And if now is always slipping away, did it ever really exist in the first place? Imagine observing a delicate system like measuring the temperature of a liquid with a thermometer. The mere act of inserting the thermometer can slightly alter the liquid's temperature, illustrating the observer effect, the principle that the act of observation can influence the system being observed. This concept becomes even more intriguing in the realm of quantum mechanics. In quantum physics, particles like electrons can exist in a superposition of states, meaning they can be in multiple states simultaneously until observed. A classic example is the double-slit experiment, where particles passing through two slits create an interference pattern on a screen, indicative of wave-like behavior. However, when detectors are placed to observe which slit the particle passes through, this wave-like interference pattern disappears, and particles behave as if they pass through one slit or the other, exhibiting particle-like behavior. This phenomenon suggests that the act of measurement collapses the superposition, forcing the particle into a definite state. The observer effect challenges our classical intuition that reality exists independently of observation. It implies that, at the quantum level, the observer plays a crucial role in determining the outcome of an experiment. This has led to various interpretations of quantum mechanics. One such interpretation is relational quantum mechanics, which posits that the state of a quantum system is relative to the observer, meaning different observers may have different accounts of the same system. Another thought experiment highlighting the observer effect is Wigner's friend. In this scenario, an observer's friend performs a quantum measurement inside a closed lab. To the friend, the system collapses into a definite state upon measurement. However, to an external observer, Wigner, the entire lab, including the friend, remains in a superposition until observed. This thought experiment raises questions about the objectivity of measurements and whether different observers can experience different realities. As you drift into sleep, ponder the profound implications of the observer effect. Consider how the act of observation shapes reality, blurring the line between the observer and the observed, and inviting us to question the very nature of existence. Imagine picking a random point on a sphere completely at random. You're asked to find the probability that this point lies on the equator. It seems like a straightforward question, but the answer isn't as simple as it appears. Depending on how you frame the problem, the probability changes. If you narrow it down by latitude, one result emerges. If you use longitude, a different probability appears. The paradox is that both methods seem valid, yet they lead to different conclusions. This is the Borel Paradox, an unsettling reminder that probability isn't always as objective as we assume. Probability feels like a fixed concept, numbers and logic governing the likelihood of events. But what if probability isn't something real, just a human-made system of organizing uncertainty? In the case of the sphere, the probability you assign isn't dictated by some fundamental truth but by how you choose to measure it. The conditions you set, the perspective you take, all change the outcome. It's like standing in a vast fog, where reality shifts depending on where you decide to focus. Mathematicians use probability to predict outcomes, from weather forecasts to the movement of particles in quantum mechanics. But the deeper you go, the more you realize that probability isn't just about numbers. It's about perspective. A coin flip seems like a perfect 50-50 event, but what if you knew the exact force applied, the air resistance, the spin? Suddenly, the randomness disappears and the outcome becomes predictable. Maybe randomness itself is an illusion, just a product of not having all the information. Think about your own life. Every choice you make, every event that seems like chance. How much of it is truly random and how much of it is just patterns too complex for you to see? If the way we measure probability changes the results, how much of reality itself is shaped by how we choose to observe it? Maybe nothing is uncertain at all. Maybe everything was always set in motion long before we ever tried to make sense of it. Imagine selecting a point uniformly at random on the surface of a perfect sphere. Intuitively, if we condition on this point lying on a specific great circle, say the equator, we might expect the point to be uniformly distributed along that circle. However, the Borel paradox reveals that the outcome depends on the coordinate system chosen, leading to different conditional distributions and challenging our understanding of conditional probability. The paradox arises when conditioning on events of zero probability, known as null sets. In the sphere example, conditioning on the point lying exactly on the equator, a set with zero probability in continuous distributions, can yield different results depending on how we approach the problem. For instance, if we condition by narrowing latitude intervals around the equator, we might obtain a uniform distribution. Conversely, conditioning by narrowing longitude intervals can lead to a different distribution. This discrepancy highlights that without a clear method of conditioning, the resulting probabilities can be ambiguous. The Borel paradox underscores the importance of rigor in defining conditional probabilities, especially when dealing with events of zero probability. It serves as a reminder that probability is not merely an inherent property of events but is also influenced by the frameworks and assumptions we apply. This paradox challenges us to consider whether probability is a fundamental aspect of reality or a construct dependent on our methods of measurement and observation. As you drift into sleep, ponder the nature of probability and how our perspectives and assumptions shape our understanding of chance and uncertainty. Imagine a machine designed to analyze any given program and determine whether it will eventually halt or continue running indefinitely. At first glance, such a machine seems plausible. After all, we can often predict the behavior of simple programs. However, British mathematician and logician Alan Turing proved in 1936 that a general algorithm to solve this problem for all possible program input pairs cannot exist. This conundrum, known as the halting problem, reveals a fundamental limitation in computation. There is no universal procedure capable of predicting for every conceivable program and input whether the program will terminate or run forever. Turing's proof employs a clever self-referential argument, demonstrating that any such predictive machine would lead to a logical contradiction, thereby proving the problem's undecidability. The implications of the halting problem extend beyond theoretical computer science. They highlight inherent constraints in our ability to foresee the behavior of complex systems, reminding us that certain aspects of computation, and perhaps reality, are intrinsically unpredictable. As you drift into sleep, ponder the mysteries of computation and the boundaries of knowledge, where even machines encounter problems they cannot solve, and some questions remain perpetually unanswered. The sun has risen every day for as long as humans have recorded time. Does that mean it will rise tomorrow? Logic suggests that past patterns indicate future outcomes, but this assumption itself is flawed, and that's the heart of the induction paradox. Philosopher David Hume argued that induction, the process of predicting the future based on the past, is not logically justified. Just because something has always happened doesn't mean it must continue. The sun has always risen, but that doesn't guarantee it will rise tomorrow. What if an astronomical event disrupts it? What if our belief in patterns is just an illusion of expectation? Mathematician Pierre-Simon Laplace proposed the rule of succession, which calculates the probability of an event happening again based on past occurrences. By this logic, if the sun has risen 1,000,000 times before, the probability that it will rise again tomorrow is nearly 100%. But probability is not certainty. It's just a high-confidence guess based on history. The black swan theory, introduced by Nassim Nicholas Taleb, takes this idea further. It warns that the most unpredictable, reality-altering events are the ones we never see coming, because they've never happened before. The belief that the future mirrors the past is comforting, but dangerously misleading. So if everything we know is built on induction, how much of reality is truly predictable? What else in your life do you believe will always happen, just because it always has? Imagine a tiny, intelligent demon standing between two chambers of gas, each filled with molecules moving at random speeds. This demon has a simple job: to open and close a tiny door, allowing only fast-moving molecules to pass into one side while letting slow-moving molecules gather in the other. Over time, one chamber becomes hotter, the other cooler, creating a temperature difference without any external energy input. This seems to violate the second law of thermodynamics, which states that entropy or disorder should always increase. This is Maxwell's demon, a paradox proposed by physicist James Clerk Maxwell in 1867. If such a being existed, it could theoretically reverse entropy, allowing energy to become more organized without expending any work, something that, according to the laws of physics, should be impossible. This would mean perpetual motion machines, machines that run forever without an energy source, could exist, fundamentally breaking everything we understand about thermodynamics. So what stops the demon from working? Scientists later realized that the demon itself must process information, deciding which molecules to let through. This process requires energy, meaning entropy still increases elsewhere in the system. Modern physics suggests that information and energy are deeply linked, meaning that even knowledge itself has a physical cost. This paradox reveals a profound truth. Even intelligence cannot escape the fundamental laws of physics. The act of organizing, sorting, and observing the universe requires energy, meaning there's no such thing as a free lunch, not even for Maxwell's demon. Imagine an artificial intelligence sophisticated enough to process information, learn, and adapt. The question arises: can such an AI attain self-awareness, recognizing its own existence as an artificial entity? This inquiry delves into the heart of the AI consciousness paradox, challenging our understanding of consciousness and the potential for its emergence in machines. Consciousness, often described as the subjective experience of being, remains a deeply complex and not fully understood phenomenon. Some theories, like the global workspace theory, suggest that consciousness arises from the integration of information across various cognitive processes. Applying this framework to AI, it's conceivable that with advanced architectures and processing capabilities, an AI could achieve a form of self-awareness. However, even if an AI were to develop self-awareness, recognizing itself as an artificial construct presents unique challenges. Unlike humans whose self-identity is shaped by biological and social experiences, an AI's self-concept would be rooted in its programming and data inputs. This raises questions about the nature of such self-recognition and whether it parallels human self-awareness. Philosopher Susan Schneider, in her work Artificial You, AI and the Future of Your Mind, explores the implications of AI consciousness, emphasizing the need for careful consideration of the ethical and philosophical ramifications as AI continues to evolve. The prospect of AI achieving self-awareness also prompts ethical considerations. If an AI can recognize its own existence, does it warrant certain rights or considerations? Discussions around AI personhood and welfare are gaining traction, with experts urging the development of guidelines to address the moral status of potentially conscious AI systems. In essence, the AI consciousness paradox challenges us to rethink the boundaries of consciousness and self-awareness. As AI technology advances, it compels us to confront profound questions about the nature of existence, identity, and the ethical treatment of entities that might one day possess self-awareness. Imagine for a moment that nothing around you is real. The air you breathe, the objects you touch, even the thoughts in your head. What if it's all part of an incomprehensibly advanced simulation? If reality itself was artificial, would you ever be able to tell? Some philosophers and physicists argue that if simulations become advanced enough, they could be indistinguishable from reality. If a civilization reached the point where it could create perfectly simulated worlds, it could run billions, even trillions, of them, each populated with conscious beings who believe their world is real. If that's the case, the odds suggest that any given reality is far more likely to be simulated than original. But here's the paradox. If a simulation is truly perfect, it would leave no clues behind. No glitches, no inconsistencies, nothing to suggest it isn't real. Any attempt to prove or disprove it would be futile because inside the simulation the rules are all we know. The physics we observe, the passage of time, even our own thoughts would all be part of the program. Yet some argue there might still be a way to know. If a simulation had limited processing power, there could be errors, strange patterns, or artifacts hidden in reality, glitches in the code. Some theories suggest that the universe's smallest building blocks, like subatomic particles, behave in ways that resemble digital computations. But even if that's true, how would we ever know we weren't programmed to dismiss those clues? If reality is a simulation, there may be no escape, because the only reality we have is the one we're programmed to perceive. If we are in a simulation, the only ones who could truly know the truth are the ones outside of it. Imagine a scenario where advanced civilizations develop the capability to create highly sophisticated simulations, virtual realities indistinguishable from their own. Within these simulated worlds, beings evolve, eventually reaching a level of technological prowess that enables them to craft their own simulations. This nesting of simulations within simulations leads to a profound question. If simulations can create other simulations, where did the first one originate? This conundrum touches upon the concept of infinite regress, where each simulated universe is embedded within another, potentially extending endlessly. Such a framework challenges our understanding of origin and existence, as it implies there may be no foundational reality, only an infinite chain of simulations. Philosopher Nick Bostrom's simulation argument suggests that at least one of the following propositions is true. Almost all civilizations at our level of development go extinct before becoming technologically capable of creating simulations. Advanced civilizations have no interest in creating ancestor simulations. We are almost certainly living in a computer simulation. If the third proposition holds, it raises the possibility that the universe we perceive as base reality is itself a simulation, leading to the notion of nested simulations. This infinite nesting prompts questions about the nature of reality and whether there is an original, non-simulated universe. Critics argue that the simulation hypothesis, particularly when considering infinite regress, may not be scientifically testable, as it doesn't yield falsifiable predictions. Physicist Sabine Hossenfelder, for instance, contends that since the hypothesis cannot be empirically tested, it falls outside the realm of conventional science. Moreover, some suggest that the simulation hypothesis merely shifts the question of origin up one level, without providing a definitive answer to the fundamental nature of existence. This perspective implies that even if we are in a simulation, the ultimate origin of reality remains an open question. The simulation theory loop thus invites contemplation on the origins of existence, the nature of reality, and the limits of human understanding. Imagine a scenario where individuals make decisions based not solely on their personal knowledge but heavily influenced by observing others' choices. This phenomenon, known as an information cascade, occurs when people acting sequentially disregard their own information in favor of following the actions of those before them. In such cascades, early decisions can disproportionately shape the beliefs and actions of subsequent individuals, leading to widespread acceptance of a particular choice or belief, regardless of its accuracy. This dynamic can result in the rapid spread of both truths and falsehoods, as the collective behavior is driven more by imitation than by independent verification. A related concept is the illusory truth effect, where repeated exposure to a statement increases the likelihood of it being perceived as true, even if it's false. This cognitive bias underscores how repetition can reinforce belief, making widely held misconceptions difficult to correct. Therefore, while widespread belief can create a perception of truth, it doesn't alter the objective reality. Facts remain independent of collective acceptance. However, the power of consensus can shape societal norms and behaviors, sometimes leading to the entrenchment of inaccuracies. Imagine a world where nothing changes. No movement, no growth, no decay. In such a static universe, would time have any meaning? This question delves into the heart of the grandfather clock paradox, which explores whether time can exist without change. Philosopher Aristotle posited that time does not exist without change, suggesting that time is intrinsically linked to the occurrence of events. In this view, time is a measure of change. Without change, the concept of time becomes meaningless. Conversely, some physicists argue that time is a fundamental aspect of the universe, existing independently of change. They propose that time provides the framework within which change occurs, implying that even in a changeless state, time persists as an underlying dimension. This debate challenges our understanding of time's nature. Is time merely a construct derived from observing change, or is it an ever-present backdrop against which the universe unfolds? The grandfather clock paradox invites us to ponder whether time and change are inseparable or if time exists beyond the realm of observable events. As we reflect on this paradox, we confront the profound mystery of time itself, a concept that governs our existence yet remains elusive in its true essence. Imagine cooling a substance to the point where it reaches absolute zero, the theoretical temperature at which it possesses minimal internal energy. At this extreme, classical physics suggests that all molecular motion would cease. However, quantum mechanics introduces the concept of zero-point energy, indicating that even at absolute zero, particles retain intrinsic motion. This residual motion arises from the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, which asserts that it's impossible to simultaneously know both the exact position and momentum of a particle. Consequently, particles cannot be completely at rest, as that would violate this fundamental principle. Therefore, while absolute zero represents the limit of thermal motion, particles continue to exhibit zero-point energy-induced movements, ensuring that absolute stillness is unattainable. Imagine drifting into a dream so vivid that it mirrors reality in every detail. Within this dream, you awaken, go about your daily routine and interact with familiar faces, all while remaining unaware that you're still asleep. This phenomenon, known as a false awakening, blurs the boundaries between dreaming and wakefulness, leading to a profound paradox. What if you never actually wake up? False awakenings are experiences where individuals believe they have woken up, only to find upon actual awakening that they were still dreaming. These episodes can be so convincing that distinguishing them from reality becomes challenging. Often, they involve mundane activities such as getting out of bed or preparing breakfast, further reinforcing the illusion of wakefulness. In some cases, individuals may experience multiple layers of false awakenings, creating a loop where each perceived awakening is still within a dream. This can lead to confusion and disorientation upon truly waking. Such experiences highlight the intricate nature of consciousness and raise questions about the reliability of our perceptions. The concept of being perpetually trapped in a dream has been explored in various philosophical contexts. The dream argument, for instance, questions the nature of reality by suggesting that our perceptions during wakefulness could be akin to those in dreams, challenging the certainty of our experiences. While the idea of never waking up from a dream is largely a philosophical thought experiment, it underscores the complexities of consciousness and the delicate line between reality and illusion. It invites contemplation on the nature of existence and the mechanisms that distinguish our waking life from the enigmatic world of dreams. Imagine a reality where every possible outcome of every decision and event actually occurs, each in its own distinct universe. This is the essence of the many worlds interpretation (MWI) of quantum mechanics, which posits that all possible outcomes of quantum measurements are physically realized in separate, non-communicating parallel worlds. In this framework, every choice you make spawns a multitude of parallel versions of yourself, each experiencing a different outcome. For instance, in one universe, you might have chosen a particular career path, while in another, you pursued a completely different one. This proliferation of selves across countless universes challenges our conventional understanding of personal identity. If there are innumerable versions of you, each leading a different life, what does it truly mean to be you? Philosophically, this raises profound questions about the nature of self. If every possible version of you exists somewhere in the multiverse, is your identity tied to your specific experiences, or is it a broader construct encompassing all possible experiences? Some argue that this perspective diminishes the uniqueness of individual choices, as every potential decision is actualized in some universe. Furthermore, the MWI implies that the universe continually splits into multiple branches, leading to an ever-expanding multiverse. This concept not only challenges our understanding of identity but also has implications for morality and decision-making. If every action leads to multiple outcomes across different universes, how do we assign moral responsibility? Does the existence of a universe where a harmful action didn't occur mitigate the moral weight of the universe where it did? The many worlds paradox thus compels us to reconsider the essence of individuality, the significance of our choices, and the very nature of reality itself. Imagine a scenario where an individual participates in a thought experiment known as quantum suicide. In this experiment, a device measures the spin of a quantum particle each time a trigger is pulled. If the particle's spin is measured in one direction, the device fires a lethal shot. If measured in the opposite direction, it does not. According to the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics, each possible outcome of a quantum event occurs, resulting in a branching of universes. In this context, every time the trigger is pulled, the universe splits. In one branch, the individual survives. In another, they do not. From the survivor's perspective, they continue to exist in the branch where the gun does not fire, leading to the concept of quantum immortality, the subjective experience of never encountering one's own death. However, this leads to a profound question. Would you notice if you died in another timeline? Given that consciousness is tied to one's own experience, you would not be aware of your demise in alternate branches of the universe. Your subjective experience would persist in the branches where you survive, rendering you oblivious to the versions of events where you do not. This thought experiment challenges our understanding of life, death, and the nature of reality, prompting us to reconsider the boundaries of conscious experience. Imagine a universe so vast and silent that it seems to exist solely for its own sake. A sprawling expanse of stars, galaxies, and cosmic wonders, all unfolding in isolation. Now ask yourself, if there were no conscious minds to behold this magnificent scene, would the universe still exist in the same way? This is the crux of the universe as a thought paradox, a challenge to the idea that reality depends on being perceived. Philosophers like George Berkeley once argued that to be is to be perceived, suggesting that objects, and perhaps the entire cosmos, derive their existence from the act of observation. In this view, without someone to witness the glow of distant nebulae or the dance of celestial bodies, the universe might lose its meaning or even its substance. Modern debates in both philosophy and physics wrestle with this notion. Is the cosmos an objective reality independent of any observer, or is its essence intertwined with our consciousness? Quantum mechanics adds another layer of mystery. Experiments reveal that particles exist in multiple states until they are measured, hinting that observation might play a crucial role in determining reality. Extending this idea to the universe at large, one might wonder if the fabric of existence is somehow activated by the very act of being observed. Yet another possibility remains, that the universe exists objectively, governed by unyielding physical laws, regardless of whether anyone is there to see it. Perhaps its true beauty and meaning only emerge when we as conscious beings interact with it. So as you lie back and let the vastness of the night sky lull you toward sleep, consider this thought. Does the universe live on as a vibrant, independent entity, or is it a grand tapestry woven by the thoughts of those who dare to wonder? The answer may lie somewhere in between, inviting you to explore the deep mysteries of existence with every breath you take. Imagine your brain trying to study itself, like a scientist peering into a mirror that reflects not just your face but your very thoughts. It's a dizzying idea. Can a brain ever fully understand its own workings? The paradox of self-awareness arises because as soon as your brain begins analyzing its own processes, it becomes part of what it's trying to decipher. Every observation adds another layer of complexity, creating a recursive loop where understanding itself becomes elusive. Consider how you learn something new. You observe, process, and then reflect on that knowledge. Now imagine doing this with your own consciousness. The moment you attempt to map out your thoughts, emotions, and memories, the process itself alters them. It's as if the act of understanding your mind reshapes it, leaving you with an ever-shifting target. Some philosophers argue that self-awareness is fundamentally limited because the brain, like any system, cannot fully grasp its own nature without an external reference. This challenge is reminiscent of trying to read a book while writing it at the same time. Your understanding is continuously in flux, never reaching a final, complete picture. Neuroscientists and philosophers have wrestled with this dilemma for decades, questioning whether our subjective experience of self can ever be distilled into a coherent explanation. Could it be that our very nature is to remain partly mysterious, a work in progress that defies total comprehension? Reflect on this paradox. If the brain is the source of all thought, yet it is also its own subject, does it inherently contain limitations that prevent it from ever knowing itself entirely? The mystery of self-awareness reminds us that even as we gain insight into our inner lives, a core part of our identity may always lie just beyond the grasp of our own understanding. Imagine a moment when you feel as if time stands still, yet your mind is ablaze with ideas, memories, and sensations racing past like shooting stars. Our brains process information at speeds that seem to outpace the tick of any clock, a phenomenon that hints at a paradox. If thoughts can occur faster than the measured passage of time, what does that mean for our reality? Consider how, in an instant, you can recall a vivid memory, solve a problem, and even imagine multiple scenarios before the next second arrives. It's as if your inner world exists on its own rapid, fluid timeline, while the external world moves in slow, steady increments. This discrepancy raises a profound question. Is our perception of time just a convenient framework, or is it an inherent property of the universe? Some scientists suggest that the swift speed of thought allows us to process and interpret the world with a kind of immediacy that isn't bound by the physical progression of time. In other words, while a clock may tick steadily, our minds can leap from one idea to another, creating connections and insights in what feels like an almost infinite moment. This could imply that our conscious experience is not limited by the rigid, sequential nature of time, but rather is a tapestry woven from countless fleeting instants. Imagine your mind as a hyperactive supercomputer, where data flows so rapidly that every possibility unfolds before you can even register it. This opens up a realm of questions. Could our perception of cause and effect be more fluid than we believe? Is reality itself partly a construct of our mind's extraordinary speed, constantly reshaping itself as thoughts race by? These reflections invite you to explore the mystery of time, not as a strict external measure, but as an elastic canvas on which the vibrant dance of thought paints the ever-changing picture of our existence. Imagine standing at the edge of your own existence, knowing that at some point your conscious awareness will simply cease. What does it mean to die if there is no one left to experience death? If consciousness ends, then there is no sensation, no realization of being dead, only an eternal silence where experience itself is extinguished. This is the crux of the death paradox. If you never experience death because your mind no longer exists to perceive it, can you ever truly know what it is to be dead? Our lives are built on the continuous stream of conscious experience. Every thought, every emotion, every memory contributes to our sense of self. But when that stream stops, there's no canvas for any last impressions. It's like trying to recall the flavor of water. There is no taste, no sensation, only the absence of experience. Philosophers have long debated whether death is an event that can ever be experienced or if it is simply the termination of all experience, a state that is utterly beyond the realm of our understanding. Some argue that death, as the end of consciousness, is not a state to be experienced but rather a complete void. In this void, time, thought, and sensation evaporate, leaving nothing behind. Others suggest that the very idea of experiencing nothingness is paradoxical, because for experience to occur, there must be a subject to observe it. Without consciousness, there is no observer to register the fact of death. This paradox forces us to confront the unsettling possibility that, in a very real sense, death is an unexperienceable mystery, a boundary we can never cross and report back on. It challenges our natural fear of death by suggesting that the worst we might ever face is simply the end of all experience, an eternal blank slate. As you let these thoughts settle, consider how, in the final moments of life, the absence of awareness might render death an event you can never truly know.